Boz.
Has spoken.
Welcome to the Land of Boz with Jeff Bosley.
Man, you have body dysmorphia. You need to lower your standards because you have body dysmorphia. Hey, so body dysmorphia. This is going to be painfully obvious that anything I ever make or record, it's obviously from my life and my experiences. So there's nothing to really read into. That should be kind of an assumption and a given. So I'll kind of save you the time of going, he's talking about himself. So little disclaimer. So today I'm going to dive deep into a tough question of, and this is, again, my world. This has nothing to do with social media, fat shaming, body praising, nothing to do with that. This is literally just me and my world. And that world is a world of, in the fitness world, I've satellited around. It's kind of been bodybuilding, personal bodybuilding. I was training to do a classic physique show at one point. So it all comes from that world. So I'm diving deep into the question there's a fine line between, or is there a fine line between body dysmorphia and just holding oneself to an extremely high standard, not for anybody else other than themselves. And it's not a judgment on anybody around them, anybody that doesn't do the same thing. It's just a personal thing. To me, I argue is like the way one cares for the way they do or do not dress or comb their hair or wax their car or don't wax their car. And being in the fitness industry, in the bodybuilding world, obviously there is a risk, danger, and I don't have studies, but a high likelihood that modeling, bodybuilding, physique stuff will breed body dysmorphia and encourage it, for lack of better terms. So I'm curious, what is there a difference between body dysmorphia and holding a set of higher self standards that are unsustainable, or a good goal to have is the level of achievability? Is that what needs to change? Obviously with age, etc. So I want to explore that connection between the high standard of self standards and body perceptions. You know, it's easy to get caught up in pushing ourselves to be better, which anybody who knows me and is in the same world as me, that's huge. Like for especially some vets, and especially I would say for SOF vets, special operations forces vets, when you kind of don't have something, you need something. You need. It's a whole nother video. You need purpose. You need something. You need competition. And for me, just to be brutally honest, after where I'm at in my life, this sounds so depressing that ignore it after this, but I have no purpose. So I need something. I love competition. I'm from a world of competition, whether it's self or others, sports or otherwise. And so I find for me, bodybuilding is my self competition, and not bodybuilding. Obviously, I have looked like the bodybuilders that put on their little posing underwear and stand on stage and flex. And that was honestly very fun because it was competing with myself to do something, to go through something, to achieve something. So on one hand, you are striving for excellence to do great things and come to a great standard, a higher standard than just kind of sitting there and existing. But on the other hand, especially in this world, it can be unrealistic pursuit of perfection that can lead to negative self-talk, self-doubt, and then possibly body dysmorphia. And again, bodybuilding, modeling, what we see, what people in those worlds see is drastically different. But I would also argue you don't know you're not a good race car driver until you're around the best race car drivers in the world. And if that becomes your new standard, God bless your loved ones around you that are saying, oh, you're a good race car driver. They don't know the standard to which you want to reach, let alone achieve and stay at. So it's obviously, as always, I don't have the answer because it can be, I argue, it that healthy ambition is it's subjective. And I'm not shitting on people that don't do these things. I say this in a vacuum, in a judgment free. Like if I choose to do this, I don't. It doesn't mean I'm not automatically judging those who don't, because that'd be a dick move of like, oh, you didn't choose to be a Green Beret. I look at you less. No, has not. There's no connection. So if somebody chooses to, obviously there's the extreme of it. Somebody chooses to kind of be a fat POS. I don't encourage it, but if they choose to just kind of live a life and don't want to, their thing isn't quote unquote bodybuilding the way I use the word bodybuilding. So, so it's like a major red flag generically and in like a kind of a psychological aspect is when our self-worth becomes tied into a physical appearance in this case. But then I'm my own worst enemy. This is the conversations that happen in my head, which is the problem. Is I'm my own defense attorney, but I'm also my own, what's the opposite of defense attorney? Prosecutioner. So why is that a red flag? Um, if somebody goes in to be the best surgeon on the planet or the best Green Beret or whatever, if you if one chooses not to tie their self-worth to that, they actually might not become the best. I'm not saying it's the right answer, but is that how you become the best at something, and especially in this thing? Is shooting for year-round single-digit body fat percentage difficult as shit? Absolutely. I'm struggling with it now. And I would argue or say or admit or confess that yes, my self-worth is tied into that because that is what I identify as a thing I want to do and achieve. So if I don't achieve a goal, I mean, if anybody doesn't achieve a goal they set out to accomplish, they'll kind of shit on themselves. I don't care if it's getting a degree, becoming a doctor or, a Green Beret or whatever, or maybe, maybe I'm so wired that way that I can't see the alternative perspective. I'm sure there's a healthier way to think of it, but to me, that also can lead to being, I don't know, not compromising, but also just it can lead to just this weird blue balls of existence. So, and it's also recognizing the next challenge or another challenge is to recognize when our higher standards are actually masking a deeper insecurity. That's a whole nother obvious conversation. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that one because if somebody was to, it's weird because it's our body, and as a result, it has a different lens through which it's perceived as. If somebody loves their Harley or their truck or their race car or whatever, and they wax it and they work on it and they soup it up and they tune the carburetor and all that, people don't suddenly go, "Oh, you have a distorted view of yourself because your truck isn't, or your Harley isn't, or your sports car isn't hitting 4 second quarter miles or whatever." Uh, why is that not? I can't think of a thing. Typically, people aren't going to tie that to an insecurity issue. That's just to me competition. But the minute it's your body, that thing there, I think it's hard for people to separate the individual included, not just the outside thing entities. It's hard to separate the two and treat that person, because if you talk to true bodybuilders, yes, there's a whole smorgasbord of issues, don't get me wrong, but they treat their body as like they're tuning a car, like they're removed from it, so they might look at a muscle insertion or the length, the belly length, the height of the muscle on flex, body fat percentages, how it looks on, I mean, they critique it like they're critiquing a piece of art or tuning a sports car. And nobody goes, "Oh, he's really vain." No, he's just tuning his competitive piece of equipment. And not once, obviously there's issues, but not once does somebody go, "Oh, that's an insecurity." I, my friends that race cars, I don't look at them and go, "Oh, these are masking deeper insecurities." But because it is the body, it's highly possible, more than a race car, that it is possible. So, you know, pushing yourself to have the perfect body that, is I argue. And again, I'm coming from a different place, to be brutally honest. When I first started lifting weights in 1990, 93, it was 1 billion% because I was getting tall and skinny, and I was influenced by Schwarzenegger and Stallone on TV in front of me. Like, I only did it for the look, and I was insecure as shit being so tall and lanky and looking like Ichabod Crane. That's the time of your life, junior high and high school, where you're the most insecure. And yeah, absolutely, I did it for the quote unquote wrong reasons. But I do argue that starting it back in 1993, it gave me purpose, it gave me discipline, it gave me a pattern of life, it gave me admittedly varying levels of health because of what I was getting out of it, what I wasn't getting out of it, what I was risking, what I was sacrificing. So it's been a up and down flow, and those spikes have gotten less spiky and more coastery. So absolutely, it was a bad place when I started, but here I am at late 40s now, where I'm now out of the military. The Hollywood thing did whatever it did or is doing, I don't know. And the cancer bullshit, it's just like and this is not a cry for help, it's not a poor me thing, but it's just more of a honesty about what I think. I'll just keep using the word bodybuilding, not on stage training for, a flex off or a pose off, not that bodybuilding, just building your body. I argue now, for all the things I've been through and where I'm at in my life, that's all I have, is that self-induced competition. Granted, my standard of what I want is high and very difficult because I am older, I am more broken, and because of where I'm at in life, my discipline it requires a lot more. Because if I was doing it at least for a movie, or at least for something I thought I was doing it for, it made it a little bit quote unquote easier. So yeah, and it's interesting because bodybuilders and they will be the bodybuilding community, particularly obviously competitive bodybuilders. The amount of body dysmorphia and eating disorders that come from it are off the charts. I absolutely have an eating disorder, in a bad relationship with food because of those extremes. But again, this goes back to a video I made a couple weeks ago. The best brain surgeon on the planet has 3 divorces. Because that was the cost of becoming the best at what he did. Obviously, these are extremes, but at the end of the day, that competition and that drive and that purpose and that's that high self standard, yeah, it's all about the B word, not bitch, but balance. And I do not do that well, so I don't know, because like when it comes to like bodybuilding and eating disorders, like body dysmorphia affects something like, I read up a statistic, like 2.9% of the US population. That doesn't seem that much. That actually seems really low. I argue, because of social media and because of media in general, I would almost argue, like, it depends on what they define as body dysmorphia. Do people truly obsess unhealthily about their outcome? Yeah, I think there's a high percentage of people that do that for sure. Do people now look in the mirror and just kind of glance a little bit longer than maybe a generation or two prior? Yeah, I think that's true too, because we're being influenced more and we're seeing a lot more. And so they kind of now are like, oh, that's what's possible. So yeah, I don't know. How do we recognize those high standards when those have crossed the line into detrimental territory? I don't know. One would argue the first sign could be like an obsessive focus on perceived flaws. Again, the race car driver that's tuning his car to be the best race car driver, competitive race car driver. That's how you get better, is you obsess over the flaws. Now transfer that exact template into a human body. It's the same thing. Why is it okay? Why is it okay, and dare I say supported, when I was an athlete, when you would critique, when rodeoers were critique, a few things that cost them a couple seconds on the bull, or some of my best friends who played really amazing football and were sprinters, how just one tweak in their form could have affected their 40. Like, is that not obsession on a flaw? Like, I don't know, maybe I know everything's not black and white, but maybe that is the difference, between some people that are born to be competitive and people that are a little bit more like they do it for fun. So yeah, when just because it's an appearance thing versus a 40 mile, a 40-yard time, or 4 meter dash time, or the score on the board at the end of the game. How is that any different than a perceived outcome of body fat percentage and aesthetics? Just because it's the human body, it becomes a little bit icky, and so, yeah, athletes' self-worth is absolutely tied into their results. And in this case, the bodybuilding, or whatever we want to use the word, it's deeply tied into their physical appearance, because that is their metric for success in the goal they set out to achieve. So if you feel like you're never good enough in a sport, you train harder, you practice harder, you watch game film, you go to schools, why is that quote unquote wrong? I mean, it's obviously there's extremes, and people are like, yeah, I have an athlete husband or athlete wife, and it's ruined my marriage, and I'm like, okay. But there's less chance in the conversation for a person, your average lay person, to go, oh yeah, football players that train hard, yeah, makes sense. But the minute you go, okay, what if they did, and you kind of brainwash them of the question, and you go, okay, there's this person that's obsessed with their body, and they look at all these flaws, and they do everything. They spend weekends, they go to conferences, they weigh their food, and they, oh, that person's self-centered and has body dysmorphia. Why is that any different? So, but I will argue, because I absolutely agree, from the bodybuilding community and the bodybuilding world, like I said, satellited around, I absolutely have some form of eating disorder and body dysmorphia. I actually take back the body dysmorphia one, because that's what prompted this video. Is I have actually had a conversation with Mike Foster. He's going to be on the video. We're going to do a follow-up on this together. He had an amazing comment. We were Marco Poloing the other day. If you don't know what Marco Polo is, it's basically a communications app. But we were Marco Poloing, and he said something. He's like, he was much funnier and more eloquent as a friend. But he said basically, you used to look X, Y, and Z, and that's your standard, and that, of course, that's not easy to do. You're older, and etc. And that's what prompted this whole thing. I was like, and he wasn't ripping on me or saying I have body dysmorphia, but like, I know what I've done and what I'm capable of. So at the end, I don't think I have body dysmorphia. I think I just have a very high self standard that's really hard to achieve. That anything less than is an unappreciation of what I look like in this case. So anything less than winning the Super Bowl is conceived, if you ain't first, you're last. So anything less than accomplishing your goal or your season statistics, one would argue, in those events, or in those worlds, particularly obviously athletics, well, you sucked and didn't accomplish your mission. If anything less than graduating with an MD, and you're trying to be a doctor, well, you failed. Why? If you did not get your degree, or you failed out of medical school, why is that any worse? If you set a standard to get that piece of paper, if you set a standard to get that certain body fat percentage, if you set that standard to get a quarter mile time, if you set that standard to have so many RBIs in the season, and you don't accomplish any of those, you lost. Obviously, I'm not probably the best person to talk to about this. But in the end, high self standards can be a blessing and a curse. They can drive us to achieve great things, but they can also drive us to madness. So I guess, again, it comes back to the freaking B word. That actually might be some new merch. Speaking of merch, I can't put links in YouTube yet because I'm not cool enough, but it's everywhere. It's in the description below. Actually, that you can click on. But yeah, actually, I might have that be a call it the B word, and like have on the back of the hat, balance. Yeah, I gotta write that down. I'll forget. So yeah, I guess the key is balance, but again, balance is subjective. It's I don't know. Supposed to accept ourselves for who we are, but that sucks. What if you don't like who you are? That's like 7 more videos right there, so we can break free from the cycle of perfectionism. And I think whatever makes you happy and healthier, and especially a lot of perspective has come from this cancer bullshit, not in this actually the antithetical way of all the woo, oh my God, life's short, cherish it. It's the opposite of that. I'm more like, all right, well, life's fucking short. Live it to the fullest implies I all of a sudden got rich. I'm going to travel the world. I would love that, but that's only in the bullshit movies. Cancer is not cool. You don't suddenly become rich, and you don't suddenly have a way to appreciate life. Life does not change overnight. But I do now have an appreciation of like almost the opposite of fuck it. I'm gonna do what I want. And if that makes me happier and I'm not hurting others, obviously that's, you know, the big litmus test. Make sure you're not hurting other people, because you want to maximize life. To me, is a little different than to live life to the fullest. If I have a 10-year time frame of doing something, and 8 of them can rock, great. But if I'm supposed to like play it safe or whatever, and only 4 of them kind of rock and it's drawn out, that sucks. That sounds horrible. So this could go along. So Mike, he'll be a guest. We'll chat about this as a follow-up. He'll use the phrase, I'm not mocking him. He'll say he was a former fat kid. And so he has a perspective I'm very curious on, not because I'm all like higher than thou. I'm like, I don't know what it's like to not be fat, but I don't. I've been overweight, dad bod, a little, you know, late 40s, too much fat, said it, you know, as adipose tissue, that at the worst. But I grew up tall and skinny, so like I didn't have that traditional fat kid thing. So he'll have an interesting thing. And he and I know each other from the fitness and bodybuilding community. So it's, and we were roommates and we've been friends forever. So his perspective will be very interesting. So yeah, I don't know. Thanks for watching. If you or anyone you love or care about struggles with the body dysmorphia, or you have an opinion on body dysmorphia versus just high self standards, I'd love to hear about your experiences. Comment below. And if you're interested in learning more about, you know, I don't know, health or fitness or self-esteem, I don't know what you want to call the crap I do, what it is, but check out my deep thought playlist. But please comment, like, subscribe, that stuff. I'm really working my ass off, and working my ass off implies I'm chopping like, you know, 4 cords of wood a day. But I'm working my ass off in this universe to see what we can do here. You know, the shop is for you all. I think some of the stuff I'm making and all that is awesome and funny as hell, and it's based on y'all's thoughts, experiences, and Jeffisms that you're like, oh, that's funny. He said that forever. I'd like a hat with that. So yeah, in the link below is the link to my shops. All of the people companies or apps or whatever I truly believe in and use, links below with discount codes. So like I use them. I reached out to them after I've already bought and used their shit religiously. And I was like, hey, I pimp your stuff all the time. Can I, you know, whatever? And they're like, oh God, yeah. So I did it backwards. They didn't bribe me. I kind of bribed them. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe, share, buy some shit. It's Christmas. There are a couple Christmas sweaters. I love the must be Italian sweater. I think it's genius. I didn't Google to see if anybody else has already made it, but I think it's genius. So if you're of my generation, give or take, you know the joke, and that makes you cool. So thanks for watching, guys. Insert sign off I've yet to create here.